Welcome to the conversation. I'm Paul Grondahl, the director of the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany. We're very excited about today's guest. Before I introduce him, I'd remind you that you can watch all of these archived interviews on our New York State Writers Institute YouTube channel, where this will be posted. You can go to our website, nyswritersinstitute.org, or you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But today I'm really excited. A friend, a colleague, an incredible fixture of the Albany poetry scene for decades, Dan Wilcox. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be here.
So you are, in normal times, pre-COVID, you're out every night at poetry events. You're a citizen of the city and the region and the art scene. How are you dealing with this quarantine and pandemic, first of all?
Well, yeah, I haven't been out as much. I wasn't out every night of the week, but 3-4 nights a week, depending on the week of the month and whatever. It's the thing I miss most about the poetry readings in person is the hugs.
Right.
You see people, you can't hug them, and you can't show this kind of personal contact that people have when they're your friends and stuff.
Right.
But a lot of venues have gone to the Zoom thing or some variation on that. My third Thursday thing I do at the Social Justice Center, I didn't. I've suspended it. I'm hoping to start it up in September. And the main reason for that is a lot of times I'll bring in an author with a new book. And the idea is for them to sell a copy or two. And the Albany poetry community is very good. When I bring in an author and they have a book to sell, that author will sell a few copies anyways, more than one. And that kind of attention the authors deserve. And so I realize that other people doing open mic things, that might take the pressure off that. Because and quite honestly, the reason I have an open mic is it builds the audience for the featured poet, because people can read their own stuff.
Right. We'll talk about that. I mean, you've been leading open mics. You've been at the center of the Albany poetry scene for decades. But you were mentioning you were part of and the virtual Cafe Lena.
Yeah.
In your mind, is virtual working for poetry and performance arts? Do you think it's I know this isn't what anyone wants to do, but is it effective? Does it connect and work, do you think?
Well, it seems to in a certain level. I mean, I think when we come out to the other side of this, we're going to be doing things in a different way.
Right.
Lots of things in our life. I'm always going to be having a mask in my car, I'm sure, in case you go someplace and they want you to wear a mask, it's always going to be there. With the poetry events, in some ways it's easier. I don't have to drive an hour over to Bennington to one my friend Charlie Rosser does. I can sit home. And the main advantage of these things, I don't have to wear shoes.
Yes.
I don't have to wear pants.
Yes.
So and I don't have travel time over there. I went the Monday night with Danielle Collins' weekly thing she does at the Troy Kitchen, a
poetic vibe. I've been to. It's tremendous.
Yeah, it is, and she does it every week. I don't know how she does it, but it's youth, I guess. And I like that, and because I can put that on, and I'll have my computer play it through my Bluetooth speaker, so I can hear it anywhere in the house.
Right.
And I don't have to put up the video, and I can hear it, and I can listen to it like background.
Right.
So, if you're there in the audience, I always feel you have to pay attention. I shouldn't be looking through my paperwork or anything. The most thing I'll be doing is buying a drink at the bar.
Right.
So there's pluses and minuses to this whole.
But when you mention, obviously, we are a live event presenting organization. Now we can't be for at least the fall and foreseeable future for the same way. We love to sell books for our independent bookstore, for our authors. You mentioned the hugs. I mean, that personal connection is gone. And most importantly, you have had your camera at thousands of events for decades, and you have amassed the world's greatest collection of unknown poets. Do I have that right?
The largest collection of photos of unknown poets.
Largest, and again,
I want all those poets in my basement.
that's undisputed. I mean, Guinness is going to have to come. So how is that on pause? Are you trying to take pictures
Yeah.
of Zoom or?
Well, with Zoom, you can take these screenshots.
Right.
And so I've been taking the lazy man easy way out. And while I'm at a Zoom reading, if I'm going to write about it, I take a couple the shots of the screen, and then you get to see all the different people at once, which
Right.
I can always do at a regular reading.
Right.
So again, there's pluses and there's minuses to this whole thing, and who knows? And we may be doing a combination of this, or some venues may say, "Well, we just do the Zoom."
Right.
Because I was at Zoom was at not too long ago. I mean, there were people from, well, I think that Danielle had people from down south and other parts of the country.
Wow.
You know, so you don't
Yeah.
have to be in Albany to get to, you don't have
Right.
to get to the Social Justice Center. You could be
Right.
anywhere.
I mean,
So-
it is reinventing the web immediately makes it global. Anyone with an internet connection versus people who can drive and get to the Social Justice Center can drive to Albany to one of our events. In a weird way, we're finding the same thing by putting interviews like this on our YouTube channel. Our audience is booming, but we're not, we still are really live event presenters, just like you are with your open mics. But like you say, everything's going to be changed for a long time coming now, I think, you know?
We'll wait and see how it all plays out, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm of two minds on it. I mean, I've run a couple Zoom, at least one Zoom event myself, the Walt Whitman reading,
Right.
which we normally do in the park, and that went fine. It worked very well. And actually, in there we had people from. I had one of Albany people, Jan Tramontano, called in from Florida.
Wow.
She wouldn't have been able to be there. Another guy that used to be in Albany, he was in Cleveland or someplace, and he was there. So through social media like Facebook, you
Right.
can advertise this stuff to the whole world, and
Right.
then the whole world can attend. You know?
It's interesting, but I want to go back to, you posted a picture and our conversation about Allen Ginsberg's visit in 1990. You
Yeah.
drove him around, you sang with him. Just tell us that story. This is beautiful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to go back to the beginning, Allen Ginsberg is one of my poetry elders. I was interested in poetry when I was like in middle school, and I read an article about the Beats, and then I found in the Delmar Public Library an anthology from Britain that contained 2/3 of Howell in it.
Wow.
And it blew me away, and it changed my whole idea about poetry. So he became a hero, someone I looked up to, someone whose work I read everything. So then in 1990, when Tom Nattell was instrumental in bringing Allen in through the Writers Institute.
Right.
Tom, I think, would get a bug in his ear about some poet he wanted to bring in. And he brought in Ferlinghetti that same way and a number of others.
Yeah.
And he would approach the folks, you guys at, not you then, but Tom Smith and the
Right.
others at the Writers Institute. And Tom would say, "I'll handle the logistics. You just give me the money," kind of thing. I think that's what he had.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Tom was the one who got Ginsberg in here. And Allen, he was a wonderful person of the people. I mean, he was very accessible at all his events.
Right.
And he liked being out with all kinds of other people. And so he did like a lecture where he ended up teaching us how to meditate up in humanities, that big humanities room there.
Right.
And then that night he was doing Page Hall.
Packed. Yeah.
Standing room only.
I know.
Really, really packed. And then after that, he was doing 2 benefit performances at the QE2 for the AIDS Council of Northeastern New York.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. And so my job, I was sort of like Tom's gopher at the times, but I loved it because Tom Nattell taught me everything I know about.
You introduced me to Tom Nattell. I love Tom. I did some long interviews with him. He was so active and so much, but go ahead. We missed Tom.
So I learned all my stuff from him. So anyways, he had to get Allen from Page Hall because Tom had to get down to QE2 and get things set up. And he said, you're going to drive Allen from Page Hall down to the QE2. So at the end of the Page Hall thing, he's up standing in front of the stage. And all these buddies, like Ed Sanders was there, and other people who I didn't know, and just the fans and people with books came up, and they were all clustering around him, signing books, talking. And so I went up and I said to him, I'm driving you down to the QE2. And he says, okay. He says, you tell me when I have to leave.
Hmm.
So I kind of calculated in my head when I'd have to leave. We maybe had 10, 15 minutes with these folks. And I went over to him and I tapped him and I said, Allen, we got to go. He said, goodbye. No bullshit, nothing.
Yep.
Went out, got my car, and drove the 5 minutes to the QE2. I told him how much I like his work and everything. And I told him how when my kids were little, I realized I couldn't read to them before they went to bed because you turn out the lights so you get them to go to sleep.
Hmm.
So I said I would memorize short poems to help them sleep. And I said, one of the things I memorized was Blake's Sunflower. I said, but I used to sing it to them in sort of a combination of Allen's sung version and the folks sung version. So he said, oh, how did you sing it to your kids? So I sang this cobbed up version of Sunflower, and then he sang his version of Sunflower.
Beautiful.
And in the back seat was his reporter from Metroland, Tom Gogola.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he was in the back seat, like, conning a ride for me, and he was blown away. He could not believe it. When we got there, said, that was incredible. They're singing this like Sunflower, everything like that. And then Ginsberg did 2 packed performances.
He wasn't a young man at that
No,
time
he
either.
was old. And in between, he would go outside and talk to people. I have a whole string of pictures of him with Shar, hugging Shar, and with Tom Nattell, and it's just incredible. It was
What's amazing. Yeah, I mean, he international superstar, one of the great poets of the world, and this authentic moment, this human moment with you. He seemed always so present,
Yeah, it was great. And I try to, that's what elders do for us. We try to emulate that. I'm not anywhere near as famous as Allen Ginsberg, but I try to have that kind of attitude about everything in life, and people talking to people. And I've been around a lot of people that come up and they'll know me and I don't know them, and they'll talk to me, and I just want to talk to them like I'm talking to you, like somebody that I know.
Right.
And that was part of it. He was one of those people among many others that just taught me that's what you do as a public person in the public world.
Right. I also want to talk about our late, great, dear mentor, Professor Harry Staley, because I came to Albany in 1981 for graduate school when I met Harry, but you knew Harry from 1968, I think.
Yes, yeah, it was, let's see, I came to Albany 1966, fall 66.
Right.
And I finished up in January 69.
So tell me what Harry Staley meant to you first as a teacher, but then as a colleague, as a fellow poet. I mean, what an amazing person Harry was.
Oh, yeah, he was. And he was another one of those elders that I looked to, When I first met him, I took a number of courses with him. And I always had conflicted feelings back then about him, because he was a very academic person.
Right.
And very erudite and knew everything. But he was also very open to the students, and that he liked talking to the students in his office and afterwards. And he was one of the few professors on campus that supported the students during the anti-Vietnam War demonstrations.
Right.
And also remember, at that same time was the whole student power thing was happening.
Right.
And student control of classes and all that. and he was very much with them. Him and another person is still around, Sylvia Barnard. She's like that.
Yep.
She was there doing that. And somebody Riley. I can't remember what his first name is. There was a few, but Harry was stood out in that. And after I was gone for a while, and I came back to Albany in 1986, 87, I discovered he was still here. And I connected with him through Tom Nattel's Readings Against the End of the World.
Right.
I realized that Harry was the same old Harry. He was this activist guy, and he was out there, and he was just a marvel. And in his later years, I would visit him and Helen at their apartment there on State Street. And
I did too. I mean, we had a weekly lunch for a while, and then I'd end up at the apartment. I mean, one of the most amazing couples I've known, and Harry is an icon of Albany, and an amazing poet too. His Tales of a Shell-Shocked Chaplain is and so many others. His teaching of Joyce and on. But I mean, he was a brilliant professor. But that's what I also want to talk. I mean, another part of your, for 50 years plus, along with your poetry, is your peace activism and your anti-war. So you were drafted and served during the Vietnam era. Can you talk about that? But you were always anti-war, and you've been part of Veterans for Peace for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, that was when I by the time I hit U Albany, I'd spent 2 years at Fordham and ran out of money and came to U Albany, and that's where I was radicalized basically at Fordham, and I became anti-war then. And then same thing during the time I was at U Albany. During that time, in 1969 or so, most of the deferments were all gone. You could go to undergraduate, but you couldn't go to graduate school.
Huh.
And I realized that I was going to get drafted one way or the other, and I wasn't going to go to Canada. I said, this is my country. I want to be here. And I also, I was pretty much of a leftist then. And there was an old saying that every good communist should be in the army, so they learn these military. Not that I really cared to learn them. I'm not really a pacifist either, but I'm against war. So, and basically I didn't know what else to do. So I ended up getting drafted. And then my time in the Army was actually one piece of good luck after another. I was sent to radio school first, and that was like basically going to school. We didn't have to do a lot of other duty, guard duty or KP or anything like that.
Right.
And then they found out I couldn't get even the confidential clearance because of all the stuff I've been involved in. So I couldn't get the job, what they call the MOS of the radio operator. So they sent me to a second advanced training. So I'm saying, this is cool. They can send me all the training they want for the next 2 years. That's, long as I'm not getting shot at.
Right.
But then they sent me to be a tank driver. I said, oh, this is not so good.
No.
But then when we finished up there, half my training class went to Vietnam, and I was in the lucky half. And I ended up staying at Fort Knox. And then towards the end, in 1971, I think it was September, they had a big reduction in force. And I was supposed to get out in December. Basically, I got out with like 2.5 months before I was supposed to. Right. So everything worked to my advantage like that. And then after a while, there wasn't a lot of anti-war stuff going on right after then, a little bit, because the war was still going on, but right. And I wasn't as involved. I was connected with some of the old SDS people from Fordham. And then after I moved up here, I wrote a letter to the Times-Union about a monument that they ended up building to the Albany County people who were killed in Vietnam.
Right.
And said they wanted to build this monument to the victims of the war. So I wrote to the Times-Union and I said, we're all victims of the war. I said, all our lives have been affected in one way or another by this war. So this to say the victims of the war is not an accurate statement. And what about the people in Vietnam? And what about this? And what about that? So a guy called me up on the phone, saw the letter, and his name was Bill Crapser. You know Bill Crapser at all?
I do know that name, yeah.
Wrote an excellent memoir of going to Vietnam as a Marine
Right.
and being sort of gung-ho and then coming out anti-war. It's called Remains.
Mm.
One of the best Vietnam books I've read. Anyway, so he called me up and he says, "Say, do you know about this group called Veterans for Peace?" I said, "No." And so that's when I joined them, and then discovered there was a local chapter and met a lot of other folks. And then it gave me the platform that I was really looking for in order to, continue doing anti-war activities.
Right. I mean, since 81, whenever I was at an anti-war demonstration or march, you were there, Dan. Another good friend of mine from almost the time I came to Albany, and I know you're close to him too, Frank Hood.
Yeah, Frank. Yeah.
A great leader and
Yep.
warrior of Veterans for Peace. He
Yep.
flew C-130s during the Vietnam War and things, but Frank and Connie are also amazing Albany
Yep.
people. But I mean, you're still doing that, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
part of your life. Yeah.
Every week I do, but at least 2 peace vigils, sometimes 3. Like this week it'll be 3 because we do a monthly one in front of the Capitol every
Right.
Wednesday. But I'm out in Delmar every Monday, and on Saturdays I like going down to Chatham. They have a small one down there, and I became friends with a lot of those folks down in Chatham. It's basically 4 old guys and maybe occasionally somebody else there.
Amazing life. So I kept in touch, and I know she's now in a nursing home and struggling, but Regin Adams was there.
Yes, yeah, Regin.
Pat Beadle, she still seems, isn't Pat in her 90s? Still seems sharp.
She occasionally gets out to something, brings a chair. Somebody brings a chair. In fact, the Quaker Vigil in front of the Capitol that we used to do every Wednesday, it's now once a month. We used to bring chairs, one for Pat Beadle and one for Sue Clark. And they would sit there with their signs, and they would hold their signs and stuff.
I mean, they've been going essentially from their 50s to their 90s. I mean, they've never stopped.
No, they never stop. And again, those are the elders that I try to pattern my life after.
Right.
These folks that, these are not momentous events that we're involved in, but my approach is, if I do this all regularly on a regular schedule, people will see it and they notice, and they do. And then people will say to me, "Are you the guy out in Delmar with the flag? I see you there every week." And that says something to me, that the message is getting across.
Right.
They recognize we're there every week, rain or snow, 90 degrees, 10 degrees, whatever, we're there. So, and now with the Black Lives Matter thing.
That's what I wanted to ask. I mean, there seems to be parallels. You have done this for 40 years, and they're just at the beginning, but it's amazing after the George Floyd killing that horrified everyone. It seemed like immediately the light switch went on and the world was awakened, and honestly about 400 years of racial oppression and of Black people in this country. And I mean, I was amazed by how fast that conversation shifted, and how everybody now is trying to do things and be allies. But what's your perspective on that?
Well, it wasn't quite that fast. I think all along there have been people working on this issue.
Right.
I would go to this poetry conference in DC every other year called Split This Rock. And it combines poetry and activism. Look it up and you'll see what it's all about.
Right.
And there's always been these activists out there doing this, and particularly on the issue of race in this country, or gay rights and things like that. There are people out there who have been doing this for years and years and years and years.
Right.
This thing just sort of lit the fuse to that keg of dynamite of those people that blew out into the rest of the community. And the marvelous thing about it to me is that being out, like going out to Delmar and these bits, or even when I was over in Troy, white people.
Yeah.
It's not just Black activists or angry young Black people. It's white young people too. I mean, there's a lot of older of us. I mean, I actually, when I was at Fordham, we had a march through Harlem for something. I was with a group called CORE. Remember Congress of Racial Equality? Yeah. We had a CORE chapter at Fordham. So I was doing that back then too. But to see that the all those white kids out there, young high school kids out there, and they're learning what democracy is really about, that this is what you have to do. You don't just go vote. You have to vote, but you don't just do that. You're out there on the street. And the proof of that is the speed at which there are being changes in our society over the issue of race this quickly.
Right.
After 400 years.
I know.
But it is, to me, it gives me hope. It gives me hope.
That's what I was wondering, since your whole life, I mean, we're talking 50 years you've been in the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing something like this as just a breakthrough, huh? And just affirming to what all the groups have said. Like you said, LGBTQ, women's rights, civil rights, anti-war. But this is the moment, and this discussion, I don't think is ever going to go away again.
Well, it shouldn't go away. This is the whole thing.
Right.
And, that's a great thing about it, too. We can paint huge letters on our streets saying Black Lives Matter.
Right.
You used to have to do that with chalk in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you got city crews out there painting these letters. This is how we have to change America to make it more inclusive. In this area, we live in a very diverse area here, and our arts community is very diverse and everything. But it's wonderful to see more of the voices of color and stepping up. And well, they have always stepped up. I don't want to make it sound like they're always, but becoming more prominent out there. I've seen two things on YouTube this past week with Danielle on it. One was she was reading at Cafe Lena on Wednesday night, and on it was a Tuesday night, they had a thing called 842, and it was a Black theater troupe and everything.
Right.
So there are people out there doing the real work of keeping this issue alive. And again, like I say, that's what gives me hope, because these people are all younger than me, they're even younger than you.
Of course. I feel the same way now. I feel like I had so many mentors of elders like you're talking about. Now I just turned 61 and I feel I'm becoming that. I mean, every year I keep seeing these freshmen come in that I work with, and that optimism and that, I just want to be, like you're saying, an elder mentor. That's the phase I'm moving into,
Yeah.
But you also have so many things going on. You've given so much to the cultural life and poetry scene of Albany. Let's talk about, first off, Poets in the Park and the Walt Whitman reading, and talk about what you're actually planning to do, something live and physically, I guess, socially distanced in the park. Let's talk about that now.
Well, again, Poets in the Park is something that connects to Town and Tell.
Right.
Started that back in 88, 87. And I was always a participant, very often I'd be helping him carry his equipment. He lived not too far from where I live.
Right.
And so we would carpool because he was an environmentalist and he didn't want both of us driving. So he did that for many years. And then when he was dying of cancer, he asked me if I would continue the Poets in the Park. And it was one of these huge things. Tom was a very much in control guy.
I remember that, yeah.
And I didn't mind that, because I always liked being the second command. Even at my job, it was better. I work better as a second command. You tell me what you want me to do, I'll do it.
Yep.
So we worked very well together. But when he asked me to continue Poets in the Park, to me, it was a validation of all our years of being together and of our friendship.
Yeah.
So since 2005, I've been running the Poets in the Park. And this year with COVID, I'm saying, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, I actually, quite a ways back, I thought the end of July would be good. But it was usually, Poets in the Park was usually 3, maybe 4 Saturdays in July at the Robert Burns statue in Washington Park in the evening. And the format that, with some variations, was generally 2 poets. And I always tried to keep it 1 woman, 1 man kind of thing. And then other types of diversity throughout the scheduling of all that. So, and we get good audiences. The people here have come to expect it.
Yep.
In fact, when I was
Been
assigned,
to it over the years. It's a beautiful communal event, you know.
yeah, it is. It's just a nice evening to sit there by the. It's only an hour. Each of the poets reads for about half an hour, boom, and that's it. I'm not killing people with this stuff. And this year I was debating whether I should do it or not, whatever. And I said, well, I think not. And I'm saying this publicly. And Sally Rhodes was there, and she says, oh no, Dan, you have to do it.
Wow.
So I said, all right, Sally, let me think about it. So then I went home and I thought like that night, and I called her up and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I want you to be the first to know. Because, well, that was the Walt Whitman. No, that was the Walt Whitman that we did.
Okay.
That's a similar thing. But so anyway, so I'm doing it on July 25th,
Yep.
7 p.m., Robert Burns statue, Washington Park. I got 2 different poets and different styles. I got Sarah Giragosian, who teaches
Yeah,
there.
we know her. She's
Fabulous
precious.
poet.
Yeah,
I'm just stunned by her work. It's
she's
amazing. She
great.
has a new book out, and since she told me about the new book, I've been always trying to figure out when could we have her read. So I figured, well, I'll have her read, and then I have a young poet who was showing up at the open mics. He's an Albany high school graduate named Austin Houston.
Wow.
He's not from Texas.
It's a good name for a poet.
Good name for a poet. So his work is very different than hers. And I just thought, well, that'd be a nice combination. So again, July 25th, 7 p.m., Washington Park.
Great. And we're now connected and collaborating with Albany Poets that you've been part of a long time. So they're very good about spreading the word. We'll help spread the word.
Good.
I also want to talk before we could keep going on. We'll have to have a second edition of this, but I still remember interviewing you when you were just starting out. 3 guys from Albany, Tom Nattell, Dan Wilcox, and Charlie Rossiter. And it was just a beautiful idea. You can explain it at every Albany in the country, but explain that. And it was, again, Tom's, untimely, unexpected passing. But still, you guys did an amazing, creative, poetic thing. Describe 3 guys from Albany.
Well, 3 guys, as you said, it was Tom Nattell, Charlie Rossiter, who's now living in Bennington, Vermont, and myself, Dan Wilcox. And I never remember, let's see, I got some of my notes here. It was must have been in 92. We went down to the Dodge Festival together, the 3 of us in a car. And, guys get together and you talking shit and stuff like that. Right. And I should go rah, 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 do this. And well, somebody, maybe Charlie, said something. We should get together. We should drive around the country and read poetry. We could be Tres Hombres. And I said, oh, and then I said, somebody else said, maybe me, said, oh, maybe we should go to all the Albanys. How many Albanys there are? We talking trash. And get back home. A couple days later, Charlie calls me up and says, there are 18 Albanys. I said, oh. So original idea was have a tour shirt with all Albanys listed on it and then the dates that we were going to be performing it. That was a little ambitious.
Right.
But we did get to total, even without Tom, we've been to 13 out of the 18 Albanys. Wow. 2 of them Charlie and I did on our own, but we figured, well, we're still 3 guys from Albany. I mean, the Rolling Stones are the Rolling Stones, no matter who's on stage, right?
Right.
So we're going to be 3 guys from Albany. And we would make money. We would try and make money to pay for our expenses. So we didn't have to do too much out of our own pockets. So we ended up getting regular gigs until Tom passed away in Paterson, New Jersey at the Passaic County Poetry Center down there, run by Maria Mazzotti Gillen. I don't know if you know her, but she writes a lot of poetry about growing up ethnic Italian in Paterson and stuff. But huge promoter of poetry, huge promoter. And so she would bring us down once a year to spend 2 or 3 days in the Paterson schools doing poetry classes.
Wow.
And we would go into a class and we do like 40 minutes in the class. and to give the teacher a break. And then we would, three old white guys, sometimes we were the only white guys in the room, and we were old. And Tom has a beard, Charlie has a beard, we got gray hair, but we're wearing berets, we're wearing these goofy t-shirts, and we get the kids engaged with doing poetry and talking about poetry and stuff. And that's what we did. So we've been all over the place.
You guys put out a cassette or a CD?
Yeah.
I remember.
We put out a cassette right when the cassettes were dying. I had a CD master, so I've made CDs for people out of that. But if you want a cassette, I'll give you a cassette.
I have one somewhere probably.
You probably do.
When I think of Tom, he had a Whitman-esque vibe and look to him, didn't he? I mean,
yeah. No, and he was the most enthusiastic one of the bunch.
right.
And he would play with these kids' heads, because we would do this thing at the beginning where we were trying to figure out who was the youngest, because the youngest should read first, kind of thing. And then the kids would say who was the youngest, and Tom was the youngest, and he was actually looked the oldest. And then people would go, whoa, and he would always say to them, that just goes to prove to you that you should never judge a person by the color of their beard.
Nice.
but he would, because he was so enthusiastic and everything. And the first poem he would read in our little workshop thing that we put together was a poem about growing up in the projects in Albany. So here's reading the kids in Patterson, mostly kids of color, and they're looking, you lived in a project? You lived in a project? Right. So he's always challenging them with this stuff, Right. So, yeah.
I mean, Tom had so many layers. I can remember spending hours with him when he was near the end and just talking. But he was I know you worked in the medical area too. He was a research scientist and everything. He had a whole other world in addition to all his activism and poetry. And I mean, he was a really layered, amazing person. But also, you also are very humble about your own writing. You're a tremendous poet. Sometimes you send me something that's just so hilarious and so profound. Are you feeling, I know you're doing so many things now, but are you feeling moved in the time to write about this coronavirus pandemic or the Black Lives Matter versus your life of anti-war process? Is any of this percolating into poems for you? Or?
Well, my poetry always percolates in funny ways like that. I'm usually not always responding to things politically directly on. I have a lot of political poems, and I also don't want to repeat myself. Kind of thing. If I think I have a good poem on the subject, I'll keep with it. I also don't want to appropriate an issue. I feel I could speak about the anti-war stuff a little more personally and directly because of my background being in the military and stuff. And I do actually have a poem about when Tamir Rice was killed. In contrasting with what happened with my son one time when encounter with the police and Tamir Rice's encounter. And the tagline is, my son was white, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I did have that. I'm kind of a poet that goes by the inspiration. I don't sit down every day.
Right.
And like, okay, I'm going to write a poem about this. No, I don't want to do that.
Because you're running so many events and organizations and keeping so many balls in the air too. I'm always been amazed at all that you do, Dan.
Thank you.
And the world's greatest collection of
largest collection of photos of
unknown poets. I mean, do you have a sense of the volume of that now, of how many?
Well, I have, I think, 17 archive boxes of the paper ones.
Right.
Okay. And that was up until 2009, I think I went digital. Totally lost count with the digital, and I'm not really sure how to archive them. I have a lot of them are on an external drive. Some are cataloged, some are not. I'm not sure what's going to happen with them. The paper one's definitely going up to the Grenada Library.
Oh, good. Yeah,
but I'm working on another research project that I really need the photos for, so I need to, be able to use the photos to support other stuff. So it's easier for me to keep them here for now. On my Flickr site, if you go to my Flickr site, I think I have 6,000.
Yeah, I've looked at it's
Flickr site.
it's incredible. You're the library of
Not even, it's not even up to date or anything like that. It got to be too overwhelming to put up everything, so I try and focus on it.
What it reinforces, I like your tagline on your emails that in Albany, every day is National Poetry Month. I think you have documented this enduring, rich Albany poetry scene that's unbelievable. If people aren't part of it, they would never realize that it's such a community. It's been going so long, and you have literally thousands of people who've been part of it. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Now, now with Facebook and stuff, I'm connected to some of those people, trading things up there. Somebody's got a site where they put up stuff from the QE2.
Right.
So I've added my stuff to that. Through that, I connected with people who were around in that early days of the scene that I really didn't know well.
Right.
Then here we are on Facebook, and
That's great.
become friends. So, and eventually I'm writing a book in the style of Sanders' investigative poetry. That's going to be titled "Opening the Mic: A Personal History of the Albany Poetry Scene."
Oh.
And it's going to go from my early engagement in '86 up to 2007 when I started my blog, because all that stuff is now on the blog.
Right.
This other stuff was all in notebooks, so I had to organize all the notebooks, make a summary.
That's beautiful. I mean, you're the sole archivist and documentarian. You're the only through line, I think, through all those years. So many have come and gone.
Yeah. Actually, Mary Pants has been there pretty much.
Yeah, Mary.
Right. There's a few. Don Levy. There are some who've been there.
Yeah, Don Levy.
But I have the archives. It's just that my craziness is and I'm leaving it to the graduate students of the future to write their dissertations.
Yes. You have become, and I'm slowly becoming, those kinds of elders that helped us and taught us and inspired us and supported us. We need to have another second volume of this, but remind me of the date of Poets in the Park at the Burns statue in Washington Park, July
25th.
July 25th.
Saturday. Yep. It's a Saturday.
And we will share that when we build this post and put it to YouTube. We'll add all that. We'll add link to your blog, to Albany Poets, to your Flickr site. Dan, I can't thank you enough. I hope you've had fun. I did.
I love talking about this stuff, man.
What a conversation. I mean, your life is full and rich, and you do so much. And I hope we can all get out on the scene and in public when it's safe.
Yeah, you too, Paul. Good to seeing you.
This is Dan Wilcox on The Conversation. I'm Paul Grondahl, New York State Writers Institute, University of Albany. Dan, our poet laureate, our archivist, our open mic impresario. Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you, Paul.